To class. Today is week 6. Is it week 6? Yeah. Week 5? Week 6, day 2. Today we're gonna look into React and Redux. React and Redux, okay? I had a great website, but I couldn't find the link for it. Those are a better illustration. So I guess what I should say is that we're here to figure out how React will work with Redux. When you guys read the documentation, you guys are gonna see that Redux, they always talk about state. And here's the simplest illustration of what's gonna happen, okay? With React plus Redux. When we introduce Redux to our application, we're going to have this thing called a store. A store is gonna show us data in the application. Our store will pass its data into our views or our pages. And sometimes our views can dispatch actions, which will run through reducers and then update the store. And I know that sounds complicated. Here is another example. Okay? Guys, look at this illustration after class, okay? And I think it will become more clear.
Just Redux, show up something.
Say again?
Reducer.
Reducer. We're going to look at an action and we're going to reduce it down to its set of consequences. Yeah, we're going to look at an action and look at its set of consequences. Okay, so in order to do today's lab, I'm also going to add an additional level of difficulty for today's class. We're going to work on top of our previous lab. So you guys will see that in mine, I have the application that has a dashboard, and then we have a bunch of other stuff here. A link to a login page, for example. Instead of showing the user the company information, let's hide everything behind the login page. So I'm gonna go back to my application, go to app.js, and you guys can see the structure of the application, how I built it. Does anyone have any questions? This is the real world right here. Whenever you guys go work at a company, you guys are gonna be given some code, and it's gonna have a whole bunch of stuff written in it already, and you guys need to look at it. So that's why I think this is a good exercise for you. But with some of the knowledge of the concepts that we learned yesterday, we can know, for example, that inside of routes on line 22 through 33, we're defining the routes for our application, and we're also passing a property to indicate what component will render at that route. So I can change one line of code. If we change one line of code, we can get the login page right here. You see with the login page? I want this login page to show up at this same route right here, okay? How can I change that? What line of code do we need to change? It's gonna be line 22. When we look at the route, we see that the root path, which is indicated by a slash, is tied. It's tied to the component prop. So we change company page to login page. I suspect that when we refresh the application on localhost 3000, that we'll see the login page. So in login, I see login. What do I see at 3000? We also see login. Incredible. Okay, guys. Imagine that we want our login page to allow users to log in and then share that data throughout our application. What can we do? We go to our login page, and what do? We read through the source code. It's just a bunch of HTML. I've actually implemented this already. I'm going to delete this. My bad. Delete this. Forgot I did this already. My bad. Okay. So you guys should be able to help me. Okay. We're going to update 2 pieces of state. Think about it. This form only has 2 pieces of state. So we're going to import uState. Then we're going to define 2 state variables. Let's go ahead and do 1 actually. I think we can do 1. Instead, let's do it by current user. We're gonna apply the same concept that we did yesterday. No, actually I'm gonna do the first one first, fuck it. Email, set email. This will be the return value of a call to uState, and our initial email is gonna be an empty string. We'll do the same thing for password. Set password. Okay.
Why did you put password inside it?
Oop, my bad, it was an accident. So what I like to do whenever I see a form like this and I'm not really sure in the code base, all I do is what I'll do is I just like looking for certain keywords, right? So for example, sign in with Facebook. See where it says that? Sign in with Facebook. I know that this project has many files in it, and that's why I've been trying to tell you guys that there will be many files one day. You might have hundreds of files in here. So just search your entire repository with that string, hit enter, and it will tell you exactly what page to look inside of. And then you start poking around the code, and you'll figure out what's going on. In any case, right now we're looking for email, right? So we're gonna have an onChange. We'll pass it a prop of a function. And when this thing is called, it's gonna be passed an E. When we call this function, we're gonna call set email, and we're gonna pass it to e.target.value. Let's just look at our email. Now the expectation is that if we start typing, we're gonna see a bunch of console logs on the screen. Okay, I think that works. Now we need one more piece of data, guys. What do we need now?
Password.
Yes. Amazing. So we're gonna copy this. We're gonna paste it. We're gonna set password. Set password, okay? So now, let's look at the value of password as well. Oops, you guys know my password. Fuck. Okay, so in any case.
Like you change it all the time, right? That's what it is.
Yes, I always change my password, and I have unique passwords on all my websites. Yeah. So anyway, at this point, what do we need to do? We got our email and I got our password. Come on, guys. What's the next step that's gonna happen?
Set login.
Huh?
Set login.
What do we want to wait for?
They used to press the button, sign in.
Yes, we want to wait for the submit for the form. So we're gonna do a on submit. And we're just gonna make sure we can, before we do anything fancy, let's just make sure that we can submit the form, okay? So I'm gonna click sign in, and I can submit. Nice. Okay, so we're not gonna do that. We're gonna do an on submit. We're gonna define a custom on submit within the body of our login page. On submit. That's when it's called. It's gonna be past the E. The reason why. If you pass it in right here with no arguments, or if you use the syntax, with no fat arrow, right? Then you don't have to worry about passing in the E. It will already be passed in. So I'm just gonna leave it like this. I prefer the syntax. And to be honest with you, some of you guys, I've seen you use this syntax. On something. Okay, what's the difference? Well, the difference here is that the fat arrow does something called binding. Okay, and I prefer that you guys write it up here on this way, on line 8 through 10, whenever you guys define your functions, because you're automatically binding it. And it's just know that this is something you never not want to do. You never ever want to send a function somewhere else that is not binded. And like this is just some more advanced stuff, but
We're binding it to that.
we're binding it to this function, the context of this function, and it's like some super advanced design patterns. You got to do some more research.
The function of setting email.
Login page. This is called a closure. Login page is a closure. It's going to hide the variables within it. This is a higher level of programming, man. Like
Whereas
you
you're
got.
saying line 12 to 14, that's accessible outside of that function.
Yeah, all this, like some of the values inside of here would be accessible outside the function, kind of. There's a whole bunch of different rules, man. I don't remember. Like you gotta read like a paper to understand these rules. And then even then, to be honest with you, sometimes I read those. I don't even feel like I really understand. I don't know. It's complicated. All right, so
the
we're
lesson
gonna
you learned was stick with the fat arrows and the constants.
just do it this way. That just do it that way so you don't have to do it this way. Sometimes you have to do it this way. So for example, on something, right? There are situations in which if I write my function like this, if I pass it this way on line 23, I throw an error. It's like edge cases. Think of them as edge cases. Does anyone know what an edge case is? Yes.
It's like something that's like a problem that's gonna be something in the future, like something. How do I describe it? Like unforeseen things you have to think about that might become a problem later on in your program.
I mean, that's one way of looking at it. That's kind of, you do have to prepare for them. So I don't think that's wrong. But edge cases, more importantly, people think of them as like just not 99% of the problem times this doesn't matter, but there is 1% of the time in which this does become an issue, and you still need to concern yourself with it. So you know what Stephen just said, that you still need to take care of it, which is exactly what I just showed. Okay, so like I said, we're gonna go ahead and bind it there. We're gonna pass on submit, and now let's just let's do a e.prevent default. And then we're gonna do what? Set current user. And then we're just gonna make the email the same thing as this password. But we don't have this function yet, so we're gonna define it. We're gonna say current user. We're gonna say set current user. Oops, set. Oh my god, I can't type. Okay, set user, set current user. All right, let's just look at how we manipulate this motherfucker. Okay, what do you guys expect current user to be when we first load the application?
An object to null value potentially, or maybe just an empty object.
Yes, it's just gonna be just an empty object. Line 14 is going to be an empty object. So let's refresh. Oops. Looks like I got some pops wrong. Let's go and fix this, man. I've been ignoring these. Class name. This is what you do when you copy and paste code over, guys. Sometimes you got to do a little bit of Control D, Control C, stuff like that. Does that work? Login page, line 33. I don't know what this does. Let's leave this for now. Okay, so we're right. Ed was 100% correct. We have an empty object here. As we start typing, you guys will see that. Oh my bad, I took away the console logs for the email and password. But whatever. Whenever we type in sign in, you guys will see that our current user object will then have two keys. Oops. And it's already validated.
How did you get that at thing?
What?
I was thinking about that last night, the at, because you see it there, you didn't have an at symbol and it said it's not an email address.
Yeah, it's just the bootstrap validations, man. We got to read through the documentation. Oh, let me see. The type. I think I untyped it.
Email, okay.
Yeah. So anyway, whenever I type in current sign in, we got our current user. Amazing. So what was the original objective here, guys? We wanted to get our current user accessible in other parts of our application. So what the hell does that mean? I want for current user, when you sign in, for us to be able to see dashboard, see that current user in dashboard. And specifically, we're gonna start really, really small, okay? I want to see the current user's name right here inside our search for. So let's go ahead and search the string. We're gonna search our entire project, and we see that we have a page called dashboard page. And inside of here, we have a placeholder on line 35. Let's test to make sure this is correct. Sierra searching. Refresh. I expect to see it right here. And that is exactly the behavior we see. So how can we get the data that was inside of login page to dashboard page? These are two different components, man. What do we like? How can we do that? We can use some of the techniques in class that we've learned so far. How do we pass it in? Because login page, think about it. Login page is a sibling to dashboard. Let's look at these two lines right here, okay? These two are siblings. So where should I write this function?
Within the login page.
Okay, I'll tell you guys the solution, okay? It's always going to be to elevate our state. So we've already done it. Our current user right here is the state that we need. But the problem is that this state is not where we need it to be. Where do we need it to be? We need it in app.js. Why do we need it in app.js?
So the children can access it.
Yes. We need it inside of app.js because if it's inside of app.js, we can pass it to any other component. For example, these two components. So watch what I'm going to do. I'm going to copy the current user out. I'm going to copy out this thingy. And we're going to see some complaints. We're going to see, okay, we got a complaint about use state. We know how to fix that. So we're just going to fix it here. And then we see email and password. I think I did something wrong. We're going to say we're going to define a new function on submit. Oh, my bad. Let's just copy the whole thing. Here. Okay, so now you guys see complaints about the email and password. That's because we don't have these state variables available within our app component. These exist inside of our what component? Exactly. So in that case, what we're going to do inside of login is we're going to call it pop. We're going to say pops.onSubmit. Submit. We're going to call that function. We're going to pass it the email and the password. Okay, so we don't have props here on line 11, so we need to define that. When the function is being called, we need to capture the properties. Okay, that complaint went away. So now we're gonna go to our onSubmit. We somehow need to get a property inside of our login page, which is a function, which is a property and a function called onSubmit. So we're gonna refactor line 31. Instead of using this syntax, we're going to pass in a different property. We're gonna follow the same pattern that we see on line 46. Guys, can you ask me any questions along the way? If you guys have any questions. So this syntax works right here that we have, but we need to pass in a property, so it doesn't work exactly. So instead of passing it a property called component, we're gonna pass it a property called render. And this render does not take the name of a component as an argument. Someone tell me what it takes. Yes, it takes a function. This function, it just takes a function. I don't even care about the argument right now. So when we call this function has to return the component. And this is where we can pass in our pop. So now we're going to pass in onSubmit. And we're going to call it onSubmit. And what we're going to pass in is the onSubmit that we defined on line 20. Okay, and then we're going to capture the argument of email and password. So now I will suspect that this will work when we sign in. Let's just go ahead and look at this bad boy. I don't need the E here. Okay, so the expectation is that if we sign in, we'll see the moment that the user presses the onSubmit on line 23, we'll fire an internal function of login page. This internal function will prevent the default behavior of the form of submitting and redirecting the user. After we do that, we're going to call an onSubmit function, which is passed in as a property to login page. We'll pass it the email and password. When that function executes, we'll call onSubmit, which is passed in on line 37, and then that will execute the function defined on line 20 and 22. Oops. So let's go ahead and go to localhost. We got our login. We're gonna test. Come on, baby. Pops on submit. Oh, because I forgot to delete this one. My bad. Where did that come from? Correct. So now what can we do with this magical thing called current user? Well, we can just pass it into the component. What was the component we wanted? Yeah, the dashboard, right? So we're gonna go ahead and refactor it the same way. Except we're gonna pass in current user. Okay, so let's go ahead and look at our dashboard, and let's just see pops, and then we'll console.log dashboard, and then here's our current user. We'll go ahead and delete some of these console logs, and now you can see that we've elevated our current user state out of our login page into our app.js. Dashboard.
You find it within your dashboard page.
I'm confused. Oh yeah, my bad. It's pops current user. All right, let's see if this works. I've signed in. We jump over here. We go to dashboard. Do we have a current user called that in dashboard? Okay, so now the last step is to stick this motherfucker in here. So we're gonna do Sierra searching for. We're gonna do pops dot candidate or pops dot current user dot email. Okay, I think we may need to start over. See if this works. So we're gonna sign in. Blah blah blah. I sign in. Why am I still here? We have another bug. What is the expectation when we sign in?
Should we do it redirected?
Yes. So let's go to our login page. After we submit it, we're gonna do a
Is that a bug? That's kind of just the code doing exactly what you told it to.
I would call that a bug. If you can't see something, is it a bug?
No, but isn't that exactly what you wrote the code to do?
I know, but it's a
bug. I've always been a bit confused what's a bug. Like, I always thought it'd be a problem with the code. The code is doing exactly what you told it to do. Is that a bug? Or is that an issue that you want to work? Like,
it's
semantics, but like, I don't know, is it a bug?
I would call it a bug, man.
It's a bug in the user point of view.
That's all that matters is the user's point of view. So how can we get a user to move now? How can we do this? Fuck, man, I forgot how to do this.
Location push.
Yes. That doesn't seem right. It's undefined.
Use hook, man.
Can we use the link
Use
from
location.
React Router DOM?
But we gotta use it here on line 11. Right? We gotta use it inside the function.
Can we use that wrong? Sorry.
I always forget, man. Does someone feel confident or am I gonna have to Google this?
Use location.
Yeah, I said you can do it.
Agree there.
Sorry, man. We're gonna have to Google this. I don't remember all the syntax in the world. How can we move the user? Push history? Fuck me.
That's view location. Window location.
You-
Redirect location.
Well,
History.
I'm confusing.
Use history. History. Use history push.
You sure? Use history.
What?
Okay, hold on. So where are we doing this from our login page, right? Okay, so we're gonna import use history from React Router DOM. Okay, so when this fires, we're gonna say use history. Oh my bad.
Define.
History. This. I'm sorry. I'm about to have to Google this.
You got it right. That history from push it. That's it.
Okay, nice. Okay, so Okay, where are we going again? We're going to dashboard, right? Dashboard. All right, let's pray. I'm signing in. I sign in, and we went over to our dashboard, and we have our user. Amazing. Okay, so this works, but there is a problem. The problem is that we're always getting our data up. We're constantly pushing our data up, and right now it seems okay, but as we do that with more and more pieces of data, our app.js is the only component that it becomes like a super component. It already is a super component, right? It does a lot of things that other components don't, but even more so. So the objective of today is to create, is to use Redux to be able to share our state with any part of our application. So what do I mean by that? This application doesn't have many child components, right? But imagine right here, this footer right here, right? This is a child component of what component? Someone tell me. Okay, that's actually the, damn it, man. Good answer. This is the footer. But first, right now, this footer right here is is inside of company, okay? It's inside of company. But what Ed just said, right? What Ed just said. The reality is that should be its own component inside of a footer. And let's pretend this is our footer down here. Okay, it's our footer on line 228. So what if we wanted to get our current user's information into here? What would we have to do? Exactly. Ed is exactly right. Think about what we did with the dashboard on line 13 inside of app.js, okay? We took this component, we passed it a property, a current user, right there. We took a piece of state that was inside of app.js and we pushed it into our dashboard component. We'd have to do the exact same thing for our company page. Right here. Pretty easy, right? That becomes tedious. That becomes really fucking tedious across, and then every single prop, that becomes tedious, man. You don't want to do that because, like, to be honest with you, in my personal opinion, Redux, the most important thing it's for is sharing who the current user is. That's the only piece of state that you want to have on every single page. All our other pages are different, right? Just think about this. If I go to Facebook, I look on this page, I see the posts, right? If I look on my page, I see my posts. What if I click photos? What should I see here? If I click friends, what should I see? Yeah, my friends. So there's, like, most content is shared across, you know, not that many places. But in any case, we're not going to do that now. Now we're going to go back to what we previously had, and we're going to introduce Redux, so that this process is a little bit easier, and then we don't have to always be pushing data up, pushing state up into our app.js. So, all right. Let's do it. I'm gonna undo everything I did inside of our app.js component. Okay, so it goes back to being kind of simple. Okay, the app.js right now is simply holding all the routes, and it's deciding at what route do we render what component. We kind of want to keep our components like simple like this, right? We're going to go ahead and go back to what we had inside of our login page. Ooh, I forgot what I did here. Okay, I forgot what I did. So I'm going to open up my handy Git thingy, and we're going to look inside of our company page. Okay, I did not change anything here. Okay, I can close it now. All right, so inside of here, instead of calling pops.onSubmit, what are we doing here? We're going to leave our state how it was as being local. Dashboard. Dashboard. Okay, but now how can we share that state? And once again, the answer is Redux. Okay, so let me show you an illustration. So without Redux, this is kind of sort of the structure that we had in our application. We had many components. They were nested like here and there. Obviously what we had was a simplified example. But you notice that one component, like we did something inside this component, and that component had to talk to its parent, and that its parent would in turn talk to other components, right? What was the child component? Login page. It was a login page. It talked to its parent, the app component. And then the app component would eventually talk to dashboard. It would eventually talk to company page, and then company page would pass it into its child footer component. But the illustration now, the structure that we're gonna set up right now, is where we have this thing that lives outside of our components. It's called the store. And the store will be responsible for managing all the state of our application. And the state of our application will then be passed into, it will be injected into any component that we want to inject it. Okay, wherever the component is. Okay, so let's go ahead and open up our Redux documentation. I'm going to Google it. We'll go to our get started. We'll do our yarn add React Redux. And now we can see some of the basic boilerplate code that we have to have. The first thing that they talk about after the installation is something called a provider. So we're going to import this as well as the store right here, okay? And this is what the store file that you guys see is where we're going to define this magical thing. So we're going to import provider from React Redux. And what's important about provider, what do you see in this example? Exactly. That is exactly right. Provider will wrap our entire application. And what is also important about provider? It's past a prop called store. So I'm gonna copy paste that over. Store is gonna be imported locally. We have to define store. Okay? We have to define store. So I'm gonna go ahead and do it right now. I'm going to create a new folder. I'm going to call it Redux. Oops, Redux. Why can I not type today? Redux. Okay, so we got Redux. Inside of here, we're going to create a new file called,
Just read
we call it store.js. So now we got to fix our import, right? We got to go store. Okay, so from this import, what can you guys tell me about store.js? What does it have to do? Yeah, it's gonna have to export something. That's the one thing I know. So we're gonna export default store. Okay, so we're gonna have an undefined variable called store. So we need to actually define this. So we're gonna go back to our documentation. We're gonna see, I gotta figure out how to do this. Create store. My bad, guys. What the fuck? Create store Redux. I forgot to import syntax. Okay, so we gotta import something from we gotta import something from Redux right here. It's called create store. So we'll import that. And then you guys will see below, there's a syntax where we define a function. It's not the correct syntax. Fine, we define a function. I'm gonna make this very simple right now, okay? Cons. Okay, we're gonna say const current user. It's gonna be a function. It's gonna take state as well as action. Okay, so you just gotta copy the syntax right here. And right now we're just going to return state. I know this is a stupid thing right now, but just trust me. Okay, so we have a function called current user. it's just going to be called, when it's called, it's going to be called with 2 arguments, state and action. And it's just going to return state for right now. So next thing we need to do is do const store right here. So inside, we're going to pass a current user. Okay, my bad. So I didn't explain that very well, guys. On line 1, we're importing a library called createStore. On line 3 through 5, we're defining a function. This function is going to be passed 2 arguments, and it has to return something. It has to return something. Right now, don't even care what it returns right now. That being said, we need to take this function and we need to pass it to this library that we import from Redux called createStore. After we do that step where we call this function, createStore, this is a function right here, and we pass it the first class citizen, the function that we define on line 3, it will give us give us back what is called a store. Okay?
What is a store?
It's this thing that we just talked about. Remember, a few moments ago, we had all our components having to talk to only their parent component. The store is this magical place where we're going to have data. Okay? It's a magical place. When we want our store to have some initial state, we're going to define something called initial state. And we're going to give an object. We're going to say email, password. And this is what's going to be called a default argument. If when this function is called, there is no current user, we're going to give it an initial value, an initial state of email and password. I'm sorry, guys. There's a lot of setup to get Redux going. This is a kind of complicated library. Okay, so let's go ahead and test now. Do yarn start. Let's go log in. I sign in. And now we see pops.currentUser.email of undefined. What it's complaining about? Dashboard. Okay, so it's complaining that we don't have a pop called current user sent in. That makes sense. That makes sense because we don't have that yet. So let's just delete it right now. Okay, let's comment this out and figure out how to fix this in a second. Let's just prove. Okay, so we've connected to our Redux store. There's a tool in Chrome called the Redux store. You click it and you click Redux right here. You guys see that it's complaining right now that no store has been found. That means we have not set up our store correctly. So we're gonna click this document or this link. We're gonna copy and paste this thing over here. Okay, this one that's green, the basic store, 1.1, English 101, day 1, class 1, Redux class 1. Right here, we're gonna copy this. And then we're gonna pass it in as the second argument to our create store call. Okay, I hope that we do see our store. And now we see that that complaint goes away. So it seems that our technical lead hasn't fucked up everything yet. And now you guys will see that we have some state here. Amazing. Email and password. So now the question becomes, how can we update these values? How can we update these values? Well, let's start small actually. Let's just think about what we've done so far, okay? I changed my mind. Does anyone have any questions so far?
Can we look at the last bit?
Why do we have to copy that test on the store, create store?
This one right here?
Yeah.
It's because I want you guys to be able to see our store state.
So that code is for us to be able to see our store.
Correct.
Okay.
There's a couple other techniques, but that's the easiest way if you ask me. could also do $R. Does not work.
When you actually push to production, would you then remove that section? Because obviously you don't want to let any user see all of your store, or is that not, like, for example, you want password in there?
You're never gonna put a password in there.
Never.
Yeah. So anyway, I'm just doing this as a simplified
Yeah,
example.
fine.
Okay, it's a simplified example. So in any case, we need that store to have something in it, right? We need to have something in here. What do we need to have in here? We gotta have our email, right? So just remember that to create a store, we have to pass this thing right here. My bad, I should have named this better. This is called user reducer. Okay, this is a reducer. It's going to take a piece of state and it's going to do something with that state. Remember, what can someone describe to me what user reducer is? This is a function. It's going to take an argument, which is a piece of state, and it's going to do something with it. Correct. And depending on what that state is, we're going to decide what to do. Okay. I'm going to show you guys that in just a second. Okay, let's go back to our login page. Okay, I don't remember how to do this. Sorry, guys. So we're gonna do qua. Do you remember how to get dispatch into a hook component? Into the hook component. Yeah, functional component. Does it just come for free?
You dispatch.
Sorry guys, I can't remember how to do this in the new way.
Go to the official documents.
Is this not the official one? I'm confused.
Oh yeah. This
Use
one.
dispatch. Wait, this is removed.
Nah,
Use action.
remove it, you action, but still there. Dispatch. That's it.
Okay, so we got to just import a library. Sweet. So we're going to use dispatch. Its signature is what? We call it, and it's going to give us something back that's called a dispatch. Okay? So, we're going to put that inside our body. And then we're going to call this bad boy. When do we call dispatch? So just know that dispatching in this action is just basically something happened. Okay? We're going to dispatch an action. So we're going to dispatch. We're going to call this action.
An object is a
Yep. Okay, so when we call dispatch is a function. What tells you guys that dispatch is a function? Yes, the parentheses. Thank you. When we call this bad boy, we need to give it an object. And when we give it an object, this object has to have two keys. It has to have a type, or no, my bad, a payload key. Well, my bad. It has to have an action key. It has to have an action key. Can someone help me give an action key to this object? On line 21.
So you want to set, what did you call it again?
This is an object. I want it to be an action key. Is that an action key right there? That key is called action, correct? Right? Okay. So what is the action when they submit?
Set current user, but it's set. What do we call it? Yeah, it's store.
You can say sign in. The user's signing in, right? When they click on submit on line 17, they're signing in. That is the action. Additionally, it's gonna have one more key. The key is called payload. Inside of this key, we can stick in whatever data it is that we want. What data do we want right now? Email and password. That's exactly what we want, right? Amazing. So, okay. So this magical part about Redux, where basically as soon as an action is dispatched, every single one of our reducers will fire. I'm going to prove this to you. This is do console.log user reducer firing. Okay, we'll go to our login. So remember, guys, our we're dispatching an action on line on line 22 of our login page. Okay? Inside of source, pages, login. When we do on submit, we're going to dispatch an action. It has an action of sign in and a payload of an object. So we're going to click sign in and watch what happens. Okay? Watch what happens to our actions. Actions may not have an undefined type property. Okay, my bad. It's called a type. Fuck. That's an action, and its key is called type. My bad. Fuck, I fucked up. God damn it.
Is sign in like you didn't put anything in that section?
Yes.
But then the other side is.
Correct. Yeah. The key has to be called type, but the value of sign in, there are many actions. You can you could be login, sign out, right? Change email, change password, whatever. So we're about to click sign in, and I expected us to see an action fire. And we do see an action fire within this tool prompt. And we also see it right here. If we click on it, my bad. We click on diff. What? Oh, my bad. Okay, wait. Because I skipped, because I haven't done anything yet. That's why we don't see what we expect. But you guys notice that we do in fact see user reducer firing, right? What was the one thing I told you guys would happen? What I tell you would happen whenever we dispatch an action?
All our Redux functions will fire.
Yeah, our reducer functions will fire. Whatever is inside of our call to create store, this reducer thingy, it will fire every single time we dispatch an action. So what's important now is that we need to actually look at our action and do something conditionally. So I'm going to prove to you that inside of action, inside of these variables, there's going to be some data. So we're going to look at action. Right here. Okay. So we'll look at our login. Now we're gonna hit sign in. And you can see that when our user reduced fired, we got this thing called action. And what was inside of action? Our payload, right? Specifically, my bad, there was this, it was whatever we put inside of here, man. This thing right here. It just gave us this object. It is just a JavaScript object. It had one key called type, and then one key called payload. When we dispatched that action, that object was taken and it was injected into our reducer. We saw that the console log inside of this. We saw that console log on line 9 fire right here, and when we console log the action below, we saw that action had a type key and a payload key. So now we're going to look at these values and we're going to perform some conditional logic. So if the user dispatches an action called sign in, what are we going to do? This is where you guys are going to use a switch statement, okay? You have to use a switch statement here. You don't have to, but every single person I know does that, okay? So what are we doing inside this switch statement, okay? We're going to take a look at our action type, and based on that value, we're going to do something. What is the one value that our action type can be right now? Yeah, that's the only situation that can occur so far how our application is written. There will be no other situation that can occur. In any case, we're going to, inside this action, we're going to manipulate our state. Our state is also injected. Fuck, man, I actually kind of did this in the wrong order. My bad. Let me do one more thing to show you guys. Not only do we have action, but we also have our current state of our application. So when we sign in, why is the current state of our application an email and a password right here? Yes. Because we have some initial state right here. Can we add more initial states, such as age? We have one name. If we did that, we would have a different initial state. So you guys will see that when we log in, we look at our initial state, we have a name and a password. Or, my bad, an age right here. But our action contains what? Very similar pieces of data, but they are in fact different. What is special about the email up top?
It's
From where?
From the login component.
Correct. Where was it taken from the login component? Exactly. This email came from here. We're gonna prove it. Add at Coder School. So the email that comes from our action comes from this email, and the state is what our initial state was. So let's look at our state. What is our initial state? The email is empty, right? But the action contains an email which has ed. So what we're going to do is we're going to look at the action, look at its type, and then we're going to take some of that data out of the payload, both objects. It's almost like we're juggling two objects right now, okay? We're dealing with two different objects, and we need to do something with them. Okay, so now we're going to say if the actions type is payload, how has our data been manipulated? And oh, my bad. Fuck, I keep fucking this up. The most important thing about
Can you go over switch as well briefly? So
let me show you one more thing, guys. Okay? This is also a critical thing to understand about our reducer, okay? Whatever we return from it will become the new state of the store, okay? So what the hell does that mean? So now if we log in, my bad. Whatever is returned from this will be the state of our store. So now if you guys jump over to our Redux panel and you look at our state, I expect to see something here. What the hell? Return. Down. Okay, there it is. So basically, we have to return something from our store, okay, or from our reducer. Right here, we absolutely have to do that. If we do not do that, we're gonna throw an error. Wow. There's no longer a fatal error? What the fuck? This used to be a fatal error. I save it.
It reduces firing. You've got console log. Is that returning something technically?
It shouldn't be. I expect to see a fatal error. Okay, whatever. You're supposed to. Okay. So we'll think about a switch. I'm gonna open Quokka. Okay, what is the switch statement, guys? Okay, the switch statement just basically looks at a variable and it compares it with all the cases that can occur. If one of these matches the values, then it will do something. So let's define a variable called key, and we're gonna say that is equal to ed, and we're gonna find another variable we're called value, and we're gonna say that is equal to ed. What do you guys expect to have happen? Well, actually, no. Notice what happened first. On line 2, whenever our key was equal to ed, it did not match the value, so the default action occurred. And then we see line 10 fire. But if we add a D right here, what do you guys expect to have happen? Okay, so when the key is equal to the value, when the key right here is equal to the value, then that code will execute. If it does not match that, then the default one will eventually execute. We can add many of these if we wanted, right? Value 2, value 3. Damn, man, we're doing a lot today. So notice how it also takes the first one that it matches, right? So it has 3 of them that match, right? But this one does not match anymore. So it takes the second value too, right? And the break thing will make it exit early. If we do not do break, it will execute both of them. Incredible. So you guys just have to play around with this. This is some JavaScript. You guys have to learn that later. or sometime soon. I don't know. You guys want to be coders, you're probably gonna want to learn it. So once again, we're gonna look at our action.type, and then we're gonna compare that to a value. In this case, we're just gonna call it sign in. What happens when the user signs in? How do we want to affect? How do we want to manipulate our state? So we're just gonna return an object, and this object is gonna have our state that we currently have, and then we're gonna take the action.payload. And we're also gonna spread that stuff in. Amazing. I know this is super complicated syntax. I'm trying to show you what I think is the best way. Okay? And it takes you guys a little bit of practice, man. So we're gonna go back to our login. And now the expectation is what, guys? What should we see on our screen over here? Okay, my bad. I fucked up right here. We need to do return state. In the default case, we're just gonna return our state. And I suspect to see email and password down here. Fuck, why is this working? Why is this working? I wanna see this stuff. All right, let's just try and see what happens. Wow. Let's try this one more time. Our state is currently undefined. What the fuck? We should have an initial state. I'm a bit confused. Okay, we do have it. So our email right now is currently, oh, there it is, straight. Our email right now is currently an empty string. We sign in. Let's just say we do loy@coderschool.vn, password ASDFAS. We click sign in. I want to see our email and password change, okay? We click it. We see that we fired an action. And we see that if we look at the diff, this is how our state changed. Our email went from being an empty string, as denoted by the red, to a green highlighted loy@coderschool.vn. Password updated as well. So now if we look at our state, this is what it is right here. A computable value, you can copy and paste it here much easier, okay? You guys gotta play around with this tool. This tool is amazing, man. There's some dope people that went around building this for us. Okay, so remember the original objective, guys. We want that name here now. So how can we get that name inside of the search bar? So we're gonna say, okay, inside of our dashboard, now we need to use something else from Redux. We're gonna import use selector from use React. I don't remember syntax. Use selector. So I always forget the import statements. I'm going to show you in just a second what it does. It's just basically we're going to select a piece of state. We're going to select a piece of state from our Redux store. So I'm going to copy this. Okay. So what does this thing do? The use name is going to do, I hope it reminds you guys of something similar. Okay. It's going to be just like all the other uses that we do. Okay. So we're going to do const. I don't know. We're going to call this one current user. We're going to say, okay, our current user is equal to something. Use selector, we'll call it, and we get a pass use selector something. And this one is special from our other ones. What we're going to pass it, something called a, what is that thing called? What's this thing? That's a function. When we call use selector, we're going to pass it a function. And then this function is going to help us initialize it. So when we call this function, when Redux calls this function, it's going to pass it the state. So let's just look at it right now, okay? Let's just look at our state. Actually, I did that wrong. My bad. Just return state. Okay, we're just gonna grab everything. Now we're just gonna look at it, okay? Okay, now we'll go back to our login. We're gonna click sign in. Click sign in. And now we can see that inside of our dashboard, we have our current user. Amazing. So just know that whenever this is called, this function is called, it's going to be passed a state argument. An argument called state. And we have to return something, whatever we return from state will become that that variable, okay? What am I returning right now, guys? Yeah, I'm just returning the whole thing. We could just do. You don't always do it. No, you shouldn't always do it. But this is the best way, I'll tell you, to be honest with you. I always just take all the data and just say, all right, fuck it, I'll use whatever I need, and then don't forget about the other ones. If I don't need them, I don't need them. This is the easiest way to do it, if you ask me. So I just grabbed. So right now, you guys see, I'm looking at the state, and I'm only grabbing off our email, right? So now if we save it, I guess this might be the best way. I don't know. The most like performant way. So let's go do login. We click sign in. And now we can see that our current user is the state object, the email. And where do we get the state object? It's from this magical thing right here. Okay, we took the initial state, and then we also took the all the keys off the action and replaced it with the payload. Okay. Does anyone have any questions so far?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Why do you need
What's that? Say again?
How often are you going to be using this? Like, is this something that you're pretty much going to be using your login for your login forms and stuff like that, but we're doing everything else mostly the other way? How we originally there, just saving state within the application.
Yeah. When to use Redux, when to use the other direction.
I don't know, man. There's a bunch of companies that are looking for people that know how to use Redux. So people want you to know how to use Redux.
You don't have to. Yeah.
But it seems like a really simple to use.
If your app gets super complicated, you should use it.
So if it starts getting complicated, start thinking about Redux to manage.
Yeah. If you cannot manage your site anymore, you can change it. I did this.
If it's like a single example, like just like those saying, currently you do want multiple pages to just like think about it and know something about it.
Yeah.
Something like where you just want to pass one thing to another page.
Exactly, man. That's exactly what you should do. I don't know, man. It's trade-offs. There's trade-offs with everything.
What's the other method called again?
Elevating state.
Elevating state. Redux.
Hold on, man. I always see jobs. I honestly don't know, man. I'm working at a school right now. But I do see people ask you to know how to do it a lot. I see people ask you to know how to do it a lot. So I think it is still in practical use. And to be honest with you, I don't even find Redux that sexy, man. I think it causes more problems than it helps, to be honest with you. But Quad loves it, man. He thinks it's dope.
Just don't abuse Redux.
Just keep it clean.
Yeah. Basically, you don't want to store anything inside your store. Only the important information.
But they only so guys, I'm sorry this is complicated, but like I think you guys should know how to do this, man. Because I'm telling you, like I've seen a lot of jobs.
But don't get tempted to be like, right, I'll just put my entire state at the store and then just like you're all over that.
Yeah.
Only something otherwise you see other
Yeah.
So guys, so come on, let's get focused. I'm sorry this is confusing, okay? I'm sorry that this is amazingly confusing. But there are some companies in the world, right? There's some companies that if you are a senior React developer, they put it in their required experience that you need to understand how Redux works, okay? So that's why I feel compelled to teach you guys this. In my personal opinion, I don't even want to use Redux. You know, I don't even think it's that fucking great, to be honest with you, because almost every other problem that Redux solves, there are other ways to solve these problems. And you know, it's just like trade-offs. Okay, there are trade-offs with everything in life, right? Right? So just come on, let's finish the demo, okay? So basically, we've updated. We created.
May I ask a question? Why do we have to use spread operator in return? Can we just return action on method? Because
You want to keep your old state.
Well, what if I wanted to keep the old state? So what are my other options here? I could redefine it again. I could say email is equal to state.email. and I could say password is equal to state.password, and I could say age is equal to state.age, and I could say email is equal to action.payload.email, and then I could say that password is equal to action.payload.password. So now we no longer have this, right? We don't have this anymore. And we can also see that these things right here, our state.email.password, is actually going to be overwritten. That our current state's email and password will be overwritten by the actions payload, right? So we can delete this. And this will also produce the same output. This also works. This may also be more explicit. I don't know. You guys decide. Which one do you like? I promise you this will both work. Watch. Actually, this one has one bug right now. Can someone help me find what the bug? Yes, that's exactly what it is. I forgot about name. Our name would have gone away. So let's think about what happens right here.
We totally remove that key.
Yep. So you're gonna sign in. Hold on. Let's just look at our state one time, okay?
So is it gone and it never comes back?
It just disappears, man. We forgot about it. The object that returns, whatever is returned from this function, our reducer, is going to become our new state. So watch this. What is our name right now? When the first time this reducer fires, what is our name? If we sign in right now, what is our, whoa, did I fix that?
Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't.
Why do I have, oh my bad, because the end of the, wait, we just fired it to sign in. Hold on.
Yeah, the name. Oh, the name's
Why do I still have a name? That's confusing.
Current users.
Oh, my bad. It's because we console log state. We console log in the wrong place. Yeah. Like, so, yeah. So, this is where we lose name. Okay? But if you guys look at our current state of our Redux store, we no longer have a name key. Okay?
Basically, we replace the state with a new object.
Yeah, we have to do that. We have to, or my bad. Yeah.
So in that example, let's say, if you wanted to put the name back in, you'd have to create a new form or add name in the form or something else to push that back into state somewhere else within the journey of the user.
Yes.
Sorry, can you explain, like, again, step by step, what you did in store.js? Because there were too many errors that I think I got lost.
Which one? Store.js?
From the beginning, from logging to create the store. I mean, you have it already, so you don't need to create it back.
Explain the code.
What
Do you want me to explain it or do you want me to delete it and I'll do it again?
No,
Explain the
we
code.
need to wrap it up.
Yeah.
Wrap it up because like there are just too many errors when you were writing the code that you kind of lost us.
Okay, so I can tell you right now, we have something called initial state, which is what? An object. This is just,
You actually don't need that line. It says for debugging, yeah.
So that's just some sort of extension
Yes.
on your console browser.
the most important thing is that we have a function here and we have some initial state. This function is gonna look at an action and produce some output, okay? Let me do one more case. We're gonna do sign out. When we sign out, what do we expect to have happen? Yeah, that's exactly what we want to have happen. Initial state. Yeah, because we don't actually have anything, because we want, when the user signs out, we want the email to go back to blank and the password to go back to blank, right? So we're just gonna return that. Okay, so now we're gonna do one more piece of thingy inside of our dashboard. We're done. So I'm just gonna put a button. And it's inside of here, we're gonna say on click. I'm just gonna update the Redux store, I'm not gonna update the UI. My bad, I did this wrong. Login page. Dispatch. Gotta use dispatch. My bad. Use dispatch, it comes from React Redux, gonna import it. We're gonna call this bad boy in a little bit. Okay, we're gonna dispatch an action. We're gonna call this one sign out. On click. There it is, on click. So we're just gonna dispatch an action. When we call it, we need to pass an object. It has to have a type key, and that key has to match one of the reducer's keys. Sign out. Okay, so now that that's done, I expect that when we click that button, we should see a console log that says signing out, because this case is matched right here. Okay? So let's go ahead and go back to our initial. Oh, I need to put something inside of that button. Let's actually move it up and put this inside our nav somewhere. Okay, so here's our button. So now let's log in. Let's look at our state. So we see that whenever we signed in, our email was lawyer@coderschool.vn and our password, blah, blah, blah. When we click the sign out button, I expect that our state should change to be the initial state, which is an email and password. We click sign out. Ooh, that did not work. Why did that not work? Initial state. Oh, my bad, I spelled it wrong. Okay. So let's try that again. We're gonna sign in. I look at my, why don't we have any state now? Why don't we have any state? Did not work.
Current users there.
Do we have a current user?
Yeah, we're showing the console log at the bottom there. You can see it there.
Oh yeah, but why don't I see it? Okay, so here it is. So here's our state. We updated our Redux store. We have an email and we have a password. Now if we sign out, I expect that this becomes an empty string. And it doesn't back in an empty string. Okay, so there's a lot going on here, guys. Kinda. Just remember, this magical thing right here, this store, this state, we're fucking with it. We're changing this object a lot. Redux store.
Not too much, to be fair.
Not too much, actually. To be honest with you, I don't know. You guys got me nervous, man. Some of you guys got me nervous whether or not you guys are not getting this. I get it. It's kind of complicated at first, but it's doable,
You're
man.
using it for universal scenarios.
Think about it, man. Just think about it. There's this magical thing called store, and inside this thing is what?
Object data, I mean.
It's an object. And what do we call that object? We call it state. And we're going to change it sometimes. Sometimes when the action is to sign out, we're just going to reset the values of this object. Right? We're going to set it back to the initial state. And sometimes when the user, for example, signs in, we're just going to take the age. We're going to set whatever the current user has as their age. We're going to go ahead and set that back because we don't want to forget that, right? And we're going to give it a new email and a new password. Obviously, this is a very simple object. It doesn't have a lot of pieces of data that a real application would have. And obviously, there were many other types of actions that you guys are going to run into.
Can you give
Sort.
me just a
Sort. Go ahead.
Finish up.
So I was just saying, it's just an infinite number of actions, man. That's why this variable, you can call it whatever you want, okay? But it's an action. Anything that can happen in your application. Continue.
Can you think of another scenario other than say username, like where you might be using Redux as a universal attribute?
That's what I'm trying to say. Like Charles and I have both talked about this at length. I don't think it's that useful. Charles doesn't think that is useful. But you know, I'll be honest with you, man. Like we have discussions about this. We don't know, man. There's a job right here. This guy wants you to know Redux.
I suppose it is useful if you've got thousands of pages on your website to suddenly be like, right, you know what, let's just import all this way, like, it's way faster. You don't have to constantly pass between those.
But there's our trade-offs, man. There's trade-offs in terms of like you gotta teach someone how to use this. You gotta fucking refactor code. Like there's trade-offs with everything, right? That's what I was trying to say. There's Redux, right? This guy's also this company. They also want you to know what Redux is. You know. And this company also wants you to know what Redux is. Okay? And also this company also wants you to know what Redux is. Okay? So just know that this is how we manage the state of our application. and most often you'll be managing the current user. But there are other cases, and it gets more complicated and sophisticated. Does anyone have any questions?
Too many.
Okay, so let's go ahead and break. This is one of my longer lectures. Let's break and then take a minute to clear our head. And then you guys can always just read the documentation. Remember, that's what I just did a second ago. I was just working along reading it. Okay?
And just to check, today's task is what?
You guys are going to implement